Okay, hi guys. I would like to throw Zinger in chapter 18 for the discussion question with regard to how do you classify production and period cost, and can there be a cost that would fall under both production and period cost? And the answers that I get are very interesting, because a lot of times students are adamant that production and period cost cannot be mixed. But I want to show you something. This is something that you'll see in the real manufacturing environment, and this is what people deal with on a regular basis. So let's start with this. Here I have my factory, okay, and there's one single door going in to the factory, and we got the smokestack here with the smoke coming out like that, okay? And then over here I got my corporate headquarters, which is a high-rise building out there on Central Avenue, and it has the double glass doors, and it's got windows all the way up, boom, 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 all the way. So all these windows are out here and stuff like that. And then here you have the CEO with a corner penthouse, and it's all glass, and we have a satellite up here on top. Okay, yep, got the satellite up on top there, pointing out to pick up whatever is out there floating in the space. Okay, so here's your corporate headquarters, and here's your factory. Now, the expenses that come with the factory that are going to be production cost. You've got direct material, and you have direct labor. Everyone pretty much agrees with that. And then you have overhead. So now the question remains, what is in overhead? Well, overhead is going to be indirect material. Okay, so indirect material, what is that exactly? Well, it's something that's not direct material, that's for sure. But indirect material is like if you're making, I don't know, let's just say you're making guitars, all right? Just to pick on something here. And you're producing guitars for, say, Yamaha, okay? And you got the wood, you got the strings, and stuff like that that go into making the guitar, and those would be the direct materials. But what about the glue? What about the lacquer? What about paint? I don't know, well, they don't paint it, but the lacquer and the glue to put the guitars together and to cover the body of the guitar with a finish. Those are indirect materials. Those don't count. Okay, you cannot measure that, so that would be considered indirect material. Next, you have indirect labor. What is indirect labor? Well, let's see. Let's think about that for a second. You've got the people working on the line who are building the guitars, right? You've got those are the direct labor guys. But the indirect labor would be the supervisor who walks up and down the line to make sure that things are flowing smoothly. You have the cleanup crew who are sweeping up the sawdust on the ground, and you have the setup crew who comes in there early in the morning and sets up the machines to make sure that they're running properly. Okay, those are indirect. Okay, that would also include your security guy who patrols around the premises to make sure people aren't coming in here spying on our newest and greatest guitar that we're making, that so then they can try and make a copy of that. Alrighty, so those things are indirect labor. But what else would be considered overhead? Okay, what's overhead going to include? Well, how about depreciation on the equipment? Okay, so we have depreciation. What about taxes? Do they pay property tax? Yes, of course, because the factory sits on land, they have to pay property tax on it. Is there a lease? Yeah, because they may wind up leasing some of the equipment that is in the factory. What else do we have? Oh, utilities. Because they've got to heat and cool the building, they have to have lighting. What else? Could there be rent expense? Yes, there could be rent, or there could be a mortgage. Okay, so either one of these, rent or mortgage. What else? There's a whole bunch of other things that you could include in there. Alrighty. Now, let's go over here and let's take a look at the corporate headquarters. This is product cost. This is period cost. Period cost. Now, over here at the headquarters, does the headquarters wind up having equipment like, I don't know, copy machines, printers, stuff like that, computers? And don't those things wind up being fixed assets? And don't those things wind up having depreciation? Yes, they do. So I'm going to include depreciation. Oh, in fact, I'm just going to shorthand this. I'm going to say, okay, depreciation is over here in the corporate headquarters, okay? Now, this building sits on land, so wouldn't they wind up paying a property tax? Yes, they would. Sure, they would. Yeah, I mean, they're on Central Avenue, so sure, they're going to get assessed for a property tax, so we wind up having property tax being an expense under the period cost for the corporate headquarters. How about lease? Would they lease anything? Yeah, they probably would, because if they have those big honking copy machines that print stuff and fax stuff and do everything but wash the kitchen sink, yeah, they probably could wind up leasing those from Ricoh or from Xerox or whoever. So here we have lease cost. Okay, utilities, well, they got to light this building too, don't they? And they got to heat it and cool it, right? So utility cost. Are you starting to see what I'm saying? Now, if you lease this building or you're paying a mortgage on this building, they also have lease and mortgage. Oh my goodness sakes, look at that. So the indirect, or the costs here that fell under overhead under the factory, you can actually see that the same kind of costs are going to wind up landing under period cost for the corporate headquarters. Now, isn't that something? So when people adamantly say that you cannot mix product cost and period cost, yes, that is true, because product cost is right here in the factory, period cost is over here in the corporate headquarters. However, the type of cost, can they fall under both product cost and period cost? And the answer to that question is yes, it can. We have it right here: depreciation, property tax, lease, utility, rent, or mortgage. They apply under production by way of overhead, and they also apply over here under period cost. You guys have a good one.